Hey guys, it's Lane, and I'm here on Valleybrook with Vince from Deck Tech. You've had a little chance to look around. Give us kind of overall big picture, Vince, on what you're seeing here with this deck.
Yeah, so most of what we're seeing here is nominal wear and tear for a deck of this age. You'd probably notice in the inspection report some of the mold development around the knot areas of some of the joists. It's also present in some of the decking and rim connection. I think we had a section over here. Yeah, one right there. Nominal wear and tear from moisture. You know, a deck that's 10, almost 11 years of age, you're going to have some of that. This deck was framed in what's commonly referred to as white wood or not pressure treated framing. Very common for a deck of this elevation to have been framed using white wood. It's really only ground level decks that even to this day are required to have a pressure treated substructure. This deck being over 6 feet tall at the time it was built, and again, even if it were being built today, would not be required to have a pressure treated substructure.
And when you say pressure treated substructure, what do you mean by that?
So there's two kinds of woods you can frame with in interior or exterior settings. One is pressure treated and one is traditional frame lumber or white wood.
Okay.
This is white wood. The pressure treated products are used almost exclusively outside or in mud sill applications when a home is being built, where there's direct contact with concrete or grade. In the case of this deck, like I said, framed in white wood, it doesn't have that pressure treatment additive, which nowadays I believe consists of what's called ACQ, or alkaline copper and quaternary.
Oh, wow.
I have to check my elements chart on
I was
that,
going to say, the science class coming back to it.
It's some combination of three different chemicals.
Let's talk a little bit, if you don't mind. I know one of the concerns, since we're underneath here, was that some of the boards in these joists looks like it's kind of pulling away a little bit, and that was a concern to the inspector, who, with fairness to him, is kind of a general inspector, is not a deck expert like yourself. What do you make of what looks like these might be pulling away a little bit, and is there a concern there?
There's certainly some separation occurring there. The stirrup hanger, one of the many reasons a stirrup style hanger is used for a joist to rim connection, has a lot to do with a couple of different things. In this case, the most notable of which being the depth of that stirrup. Now, as you can see, there is some separation occurring at the joist rim intersection, which I think you can probably see in what you're being shown here. This stirrup is still catching well over half of its depth for the stirrup section of the hanger.
And that's really the marker that you're looking at. If it's slipped, is it beyond the 50%? And in this case, it isn't.
It's not. Now, that said, is this an area you want to keep an eye on? Well, of course, anything that shows movement you want to keep an eye on, but the more important thing to keep in mind is how a structure tends to hold itself together. On top of this joist is a series of deck boards, as you can see, all of which have an attachment to this joist, all of which have attachments to subsequent joists that are not showing separation. So you have to look at it in terms of the collective body of the deck and the overall integrity the structure still has. This deck still has what I would expect to be normal integrity for a deck that's 11 years of age.
How about back here, if you don't mind me bringing you back here? One of the things that I know when Amy was here is the inspector pointed out these nails that look like some were shot into the side, some were shot in, through, almost like they weren't quite catching. Any concern on your mind?
No, I mean, what I'm seeing here is traditional deck construction. You have a series of gun nails that were installed with a pneumatic or gun nailer, as we call them. And oftentimes they don't always get set perfectly because of the setting on the gun. Now, this could also be a result of freeze-thaw cycles over the life of the deck. When it was built, they may very well have been set to the depth that this one is set, but because freeze-thaw causes wood to expand and contract because of the freeze-thaw cycles of moisture, these nails may have lifted out. The real important connection you need to pay attention to here are these half-inch lag bolts, which, if you pan out, you can kind of see a series of them have been installed in pretty much every joist bay on this deck, which is exactly how they would be expected to be installed even if this deck were being built nowadays.
And is there any evidence that these lag bolts have been compromised or have moved to a point that would cause a safety issue?
No, and if that were the case, that would certainly be a safety issue. You've probably heard about and seen on the news from time to time deck collapses. The most recent of which comes to mind happened in Berkeley with the Irish students that were, for one, they were overcapacitating the deck. But I think I'd be shocked if once they do the forensics on that, they don't learn that that deck had an inadequate ledger attachment.
And that's this board here.
And that's this board right here. Arguably the most critical component of your deck is your ledger attachment.
And how does it look?
Looks great. And again, it was built 11 years removed now in compliance to how it would still have to be built today.
Okay.
With the half-inch lag, high and low, altering placement in every single joist bay.
Okay. I'd like to move you to the a couple of notes that the inspector made, and I appreciate your time. One was the distance between these balusters. Yes. Sure. So we saw in our report that he had the tape measure.
He was hooking out to out, which when you do that, you can see you have approximately, approximately a 7-inch out to out measurement. Yes. That is a completely insignificant measurement. The more significant, and the one that code pertains to, is the space that exists between the balusters. As you can see, this one is just shy of 4 inches.
All right.
The rule is 4 inches. You can have no space greater than 4. This one goes down to 3 5/8, and subsequently 3 3/4. So really the only thing you could fault the craftsman who built this for was he didn't get perfect consistency in his spacing, but he did have compliant spacing.
Okay. One of the things that also came up was there's a, like for example, there's a little splitting here. I guess it's actually two different, and bear with me while I turn the page here. Was on some of the looser or damaged deck boards. And then there was one at the exterior steps were damaged and loose. A fall or injury can occur. I'm not exactly.
So what you're seeing here are what we've come to call character cracks on the front tread. You can see, as you can imagine, over the life of this deck, most of the weight displaced, much like I'm doing now, when you're going down or traveling up the stairs, is placed on the front tread.
Yeah.
As a result, these fractures, or what we call character cracks, keep in mind we're dealing with wood and it will continue to age, tend to develop on the lead tread. Would it be a good idea to potentially replace those lead treads? Sure. Is it something that's impending and in need of replacement right now? You're probably on the cusp. Wouldn't be a bad idea to address it in short order. But it is, again, for an 11-year-old structure, common wear and tear.
If we don't mind going up to the top, did you see in the corner handrail area, it looks like this corner up here had a little bit of separation. I wondered if you felt like that should be addressed.
Right here?
Right here in the center here.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so this corner, definitely something you'd want to get some lag bolts into, or back out these screws, put in longer screws. Whenever you see a gap like this develop, not a bad idea to address it, especially when we're talking about in the guardrail area.
Okay. So you've had a chance. In fact, when I got here, you were kind of doing your own thing, looking around.
Sure.
What, and I know you'll probably take some time to put this on paper, but what are your recommendations really for
Sure.
addressing, repair, if any, at this point?
Sure, yeah. So knowing that this is a home that's obviously in the process of being purchased, and I'm going to operate under the assumption you're going to be in it for a while, there's some things that I would certainly address sooner than later. I think we've identified them as probably being those lead treads on your stairs.
To the ones you were talking about
Yeah,
over
the
here.
ones that have, and typically when we're doing a replacement of treads, we're going to do all of them. We're not just going to do the lead tread. But in terms of the integrity of the structure and the safety of the structure, the potential for some sort of fracture to occur, you would really only have to replace that lead tread. If you want to be proactive on these areas where the gap has developed on these joists, We could look at swapping out those 3 or 4 joists that have a fairly pronounced gap, but are still sitting on 50% or better of the joist hanger. That's kind of a preemptive maneuver. You know, that's a strong 1/4 of an inch gap that has developed between that and that. This one's probably pushing a 1/2 inch. This one's probably north of a 1/2 inch. But then when we get to the corner, I see good connection and continuity there. So is that something you would have to do? Not necessarily. I'll certainly indicate it on the inspection report.
And how physically do you make a repair like this?
Yeah, so what is involved in that is we just extract this joist and replace it with a new one. So we go up on the deck surface, back out all of the screws, put in a joist that's 1/4 of an inch longer than this one.
Okay.
Not really doing anything too invasive to the structure, and knowing that now we have at least reestablished continuity or continuous connection between the joist and the rim. This header right here, which services the stairs, with the mold cluster that's developed there and the one that's developed here, tapping on it has a bit of a hollow sound. Might lead me to believe there's some internal decay on that double 2x10 there. Fortunately, because of how it was built, it wouldn't be that hard to extract that double, put in a new one, you'd be good to go. Okay. Keeping in mind that everything we're replacing, although we're replacing white wood, we're not replacing it with white wood. We're going to replace it with pressure treated. Okay. So that becomes kind of an issue more from an aesthetic point of view, in that the joists that are now going to replace and the framing components that are now going to replace what's here aren't going to match exactly what you have. That's not usually a deal breaker for people when they know it comes at the benefit of safety.
Can you paint it all one color?
Never. And
Never.
I'm glad I've got
an
audience here, and I sing this one from the mountaintops, and hopefully the neighbors can hear me too. Never paint the substructure of your deck.
Under here.
Biggest mistake people make. And oftentimes it occurs when the house painters are here and they just don't want to mask off the underside of your deck. They'll say, hey, we'll shoot the underside of your deck for free. That's really a fancy way of saying we don't want to mask off the underside of your deck. What you do when you paint the substructure of your deck, keep in mind, one joist on a deck this size has approximately 100 screws penetrating it. Water will invariably get into those holes. When that happens and the joist is painted, the joist acts like a cup filling up with water. And rot will only be sped up if you do that. So, and especially if we're talking about pressure treated, obviously the pieces we're going to put in are going to be pressure treated. There's no need to put paint on them because that ACQ treatment is naturally impervious to the elements.
What about the stairs?
Same story on the stairs. Nothing that's on the underside of your deck should be painted.
Okay.
The sun surface, the sun-facing surfaces, we're very strong advocates for refinishing, and you should keep a strong finish on it. Without a doubt, the best thing you can do to promote longevity for this structure, keep the snow off of it.
Snow.
Can't do a whole lot about the rainfall, but when the snow hits, get it off it within 24 hours because it's that slow freeze-thaw cycle that any given snowfall will go through before it finally melts that wreaks havoc on the substructure of a deck. Water expands when it freezes, so it's, you know, think of yourself putting on a shirt that's too small and then flexing your muscles. Yeah. You wouldn't have to do that very often, very long before you took that shirt off and it was completely destroyed. Same phenomenon occurs with a deck. Keep the moisture off of it as much as you can. Obviously, you can't do anything about rain, but you can do a lot about snow.
And you're going to keep your shirt on during this.
I'll keep you on, I promise.
Okay, last question. You know, and it's one, being in real estate, it seems that bottom line always seems to be so important to people. Sure. I know you haven't had a chance to really get this written down, but one of the things that we've been talking about is this $800 or $8,000 to fix?
The ROM, or the rough order of magnitude.
Yeah,
right?
do we have a rough order of magnitude here?
Sure. Yeah, so a couple of joists, the header at the stairs, lead treads on your stair system. Now, I would also say this, although it would not be required, it would probably be a really good idea if we're going to go to the trouble of extracting all of these stair treads, to put bona fide stringers beneath them instead of these little crush blocks.
What do you mean bona fide stringers?
If you want to walk around here, I'll tell you what I'm talking about. So there are two ways to build stairs. This is what we would call a traditional builder-built set of stairs. You have a crush block here, a crush block there, and a clear span set of treads. Okay. The gold standard way to build stairs would be to put what's called a stringer or a sawtooth stringer, and I will do a very rapid drawing so you can gather a sense of of what I'm talking about.
So we've got a what did you call this board here?
Crush block.
Crush block, but we don't have a solid piece in between the blocks. Is that what you're
Right.
getting at? Okay.
So I'm sure you've all seen a home when it's being built, and you've walked